All right. What is up, guys? Georgia completely dominated yet another SEC opponent. The final score was 37-0. 37-0. Second game in a row, Georgia shuts out an SEC opponent. This happened to be a top 10 Arkansas team. Arkansas is a very, very solid team. I think they'll win around 8 or 9 games this year. So nothing against Arkansas. Georgia is just that good. I know a lot of people gave Arkansas some, or at least Arkansas, a lot of people gave Arkansas a good chance in this game, especially with JT Daniels being out due to injury. We'll talk about that later. But Stetson Bennett came in. He just went a 7 of 11 for 72 yards passing. Didn't really need him to do much. I believe he had a couple of rushes. He had 3 carries for 16 yards, did not get sacked. Threw one terrible pass that should have been intercepted. It wasn't. It was dropped. And Arkansas had 13 penalties in this game. 13. All 13 of these penalties came in the first 3 quarters. The fourth quarter, Arkansas, the game was just already out of reach. And unfortunately for Arkansas, it just didn't go their way at all today. Starting it off in the game, Georgia started the ball at the 25, marched down the field easily. I believe Georgia threw the ball 3 times, rushed it 6 times on that first drive. Offensive line completely dominated the front, especially in those first couple of drives, and in fact, the entire game. But in that first drive, the offensive line looked really, really good. I believe, yes, it was our boy Zeus who was able to carry the ball in to the end zone for like a 3-yard touchdown. And then Georgia got a 3-and-out. Arkansas went 3 plays and minus 10 yards to start out the game. And this game was just over right from the get-go, unfortunately, if you're an Arkansas fan. Georgia was running it down Arkansas's throat, something I actually didn't expect. Arkansas had one of the better rush defenses in the country. I believe they were top 15, averaging around 120 yards rushing allowed per game. That's pretty good. Georgia came in. Georgia was around, I think, 60th in the country in total rush offense, and they ran the ball for 56 times for over 270 yards and got 3 touchdowns. That's 4.9 yards per carry. Georgia, I know a lot of fans were saying Georgia cannot run the ball, but Georgia just came in and flat out stomped Arkansas's front 3. And Arkansas runs that 3-3-5 defense. Their defense coming into this game was, I think they were around top 10 in total yards allowed per game. Georgia wasn't able to do much through the air because of how well that rush offense was, and they completely dominated Arkansas on that line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Georgia's front 7, insane. We'll talk about that in a second. But to finish it off with this offense, as you can see with this ticker right down below, James Cook had 12 carries, 87 yards. Kendall Milton had 12 carries for about 48 yards and a touchdown. Zeus, he had 3 total touchdowns in this game, which was very exciting. But he had 16 carries, 68 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing, and then 1 recovery. And then even our boy Kenny McIntosh had 10 carries for 57 yards. Most of his carries came late in the second half. But yeah, Georgia was able to run the ball. Offense played pretty well. You can't start any better than what Georgia did in the first quarter. 21-0. It was 14-0. Georgia got 3 straight 3-and-outs in a row. Blocked. I think it was Dan Jackson blocked the punt, recovered by Zeus in the end zone, made it 21-0. And Arkansas, unfortunately, couldn't do anything in this entire game. Again, second straight shutout for the Dogs. Second straight shutout against SEC opponents. This is the first time since, I believe, 1980 that this has ever happened. The same year Georgia won the national title. Just keep that in mind. But looking at this defense, Arkansas was held to just 162 yards. If we're being real, I believe Arkansas had 60 or 70 yards in the fourth quarter. But still, an insane start from the defense in an insane game throughout the entire game. KJ Jefferson just went 8 of 13 for, I think, 65 yards. Didn't throw an interception. Arkansas only had one turnover, and that came on the blocked punt. They just could not move the ball because of how bad their offensive line was playing. Fortunately for UGA, it was because of that front seven. Georgia's front seven was insane yet again. Sam Pittman, one of the best, if not the best offensive line coaches in the country. He was upset through the entire game. I believe they had 5 false start penalties, 5. 4 of them coming in the first half. And that's just not how you're going to get it done if you're trying to upset the number 2 team in the country, especially on the road. And shout out to the crowd. The crowd was bumping in this game. Probably one of the, if we're being real here, one of the loudest crowds of the season. But looking how they ran the ball, this was one of the best rushing teams in the country coming into this game. They had 29 carries for 75 yards. 75 yards. And in the first half, they were held to, I think, 17 or 18 carries for like 38 yards. So, like I said last week, Arkansas was going to have to play really, really well on the offensive line and hold Georgia. I expected JT Daniels to play, obviously, but hold Georgia to about 21 to 24 points if they were going to have a shot in this game. And unfortunately for them, their offense just could never get going. This is how good Georgia's defense is, especially Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, Jalen Carter. It all started in the middle of that defensive line for UGA. This is why Georgia's rush defense and rush scheme is probably the best in the country. Don't even just look at stats. Watch how these teams play, and you can really, really see how Georgia's scheme is by far one of the best in the country when it comes to rush defense. But yeah, KJ Jefferson just could not get going. Believe it or not, he had 8 carries for just 5 yards. You got to account for all the sacks that he had. I think he had 4. I think he got sacked 4 times, I believe. Adam Anderson had 1. Nakobe Dean had 2 sacks, unless they gave the sack to Wyatt. He may have had just 1.5 sacks, but still, Georgia's pass rush, another great game. Like I said, Georgia's defense, insane. You can't really say anything bad about this defense at all. Keely Ringo got to start at cornerback number 2, which was cool to see. He played pretty well. I think he gave up his first reception of the year, but that was for like a 6-yard gain, so I'm not too upset about that. But still, a total for Arkansas passing-wise, they went, I think, 10 of 16, yet for 87 yards. That's with 2 quarterbacks. Second QB, Hornsby, came in the fourth quarter when the game was already out of reach. What else is there to say on this game other than Georgia dominated this game from start to finish? This game was never close. Georgia owned time of possession as well, had 37 minutes, had the ball for 37 minutes on offense. Arkansas had it for 23. Jack Pod went 3 for 3, kicking the field goals. And yeah, Georgia completely dominated Arkansas on the at the line of scrimmage, both offensive line and defensive line, and Arkansas could not get anything going. Georgia wins 37-0. So let's see at some of these comments. Go Dogs. Florida is the toughest game before the SEC title. It might be. Florida is a rush team just like Arkansas. Florida is the best rushing team in the entire SEC, and they are top 5 in the country right now in rushing yards per game. I think they're at like 320 yards, which is insane. That shows you how well Dan Mullen is. But look what Arkansas could do in this game. Georgia is probably going to win that line of scrimmage at least 7 out of 10 times against Florida. Florida has a really good offensive line, but Arkansas is probably the best offensive line Georgia will play all year, if we're being real. Still got Auburn. Auburn's offensive line has been inconsistent. Kentucky usually always has a decent offensive line. Florida is right there. Florida's offensive line has been playing above par. But I'm going to be real with you. Georgia is going to force Florida to make Emory Jones beat the Dogs defensively. I can't see that happening right now. I think Georgia is probably going to beat Florida by a convincing margin too. I could be wrong, and that game is a month away. So we'll see about that. Arkansas was exposed. Well, this is how good Georgia is. Arkansas is a top 15 team, legitimately. Maybe not top 10, But if you were watching Arkansas the first 4 weeks, specifically after the third quarter of the Rice game, this team completely dominated every team on that line of scrimmage. They dominated Texas on the line of scrimmage. They dominated Georgia Southern. I think that's who they played, and then Texas A&M. They won all those games by double digits. They completely beat up Georgia Southern and Texas. And then Texas A&M, I think Texas A&M's defense played really, really well, and especially after the first quarter, and they were able to compete in that game. But, yeah, Arkansas's offensive line was the story, and their defensive line. That front three, they run that 3-3-5 scheme really, really well. That's a Barry Odom-style defense for you. But, yeah, Arkansas just doesn't have enough talent, in my opinion, to beat Georgia. And they just didn't have enough skill set at wide receiver, but especially, but they just didn't have enough on that offensive line. Unfortunately, that's just how talented Georgia's defense is. You got all these 4- and 5-star recruits, but they are very, very athletic. This defense is insane, man. I haven't seen a defense this good, man, since maybe even LSU back in 2011. Alabama had a really good defense in 2012 too, and even 2010. But yeah, Georgia has an insane amount of talent defensively, and it showed today. Yeah, Georgia's here. What's up, George? Hope you're doing well, man. I see you all the time on the Uncle Lou page and even Mark Rogers call-in shows. But, yeah, the Gators have a big game tonight on the road against Kentucky and Lexington. That game's going to be fun. That's around, I think, 6 p.m.? I think that's 5 p.m. Local time. That is a big game for the SEC East. That, in my opinion, that's probably the battle for the second place. But yeah, the Gators have a big one tonight. We'll see if Florida has enough to go on the road and beat a very, very, very good Kentucky team. Go Dogs. Yep, Dogs rolled today 37-0. Man. And I always ask this after most of these shows, so I'm going to ask it again. And I want your guys' opinion. Are the Dogs the best team in the country? It is hard to sit here and watch these games and not think Georgia is the best team in the country. Georgia did this without their starting quarterback, their starting wide receiver. Blaylock is still out. I didn't even see Marcus Rosemy in this game at all. Karis Jackson played a little bit on offense. He was just out there returning. I don't know what's up with that. But Georgia is great, not good, but great at every aspect of the game, is as deep as you can be at every position. Any team that thinks it's going to beat this team better think again. Well, like I said, this brings up my question: is Georgia the best team in the country? Which that's a solid answer. But you got to watch Alabama. Alabama is about to kick off, I think, right now against Ole Miss. I have that game right here. I have another screen right here, so I'll be probably watching the Cincinnati game. Or, Cincinnati's about to go up 2 scores. But, I think right now it's between Bama and Georgia, but man, it's really hard for me to give the edge to the Dogs because Georgia hasn't beaten Alabama since 2007. This is a 2007 style season, it seems. Georgia has completely dominated every opponent, but as to its being a 2007 style season, there have been so many upsets that I couldn't even believe. Just thinking about this right now, Clemson and North Carolina both have 2 losses. Just let that sink in. What else? Oklahoma has won 3 out of 4 games by 1 possession. They haven't even played a ranked team yet. They haven't even played a top 35 team yet. Let that sink in. They're about to today, though. And Alabama and Ole Miss just kicked off. Ole Miss gets the ball to start. But, yeah, this is a crazy season. This is a great season. And the Dogs, so far, in my opinion, have looked like the best team in the country. Do you rank them number 1? I don't think so. I got to see Bama lose first, or I got to see Georgia beat Bama. But looking at Georgia's schedule, you got Auburn next week on the road. That will be tricky. I don't know what time that game will be played. I think it might be 3:30 because the SEC should have a doubleheader on CBS. So Gary Danielson and Brad Nessler should be at the Alabama-Texas A&M game unless something crazy happens, unless Alabama loses and unless Texas A&M loses. Then I think that'll just be a night game, and then the real SEC game of the week would be Ole Miss, Arkansas. But we'll see. I think it's going to be hard for Georgia to play that game at 12. I don't think ESPN or whoever comes up with the TV schedule is going to do that to UGA. But yeah, Auburn is a good team. I don't think they're a great team. I think they're a 6-7 win team in the SEC. If they lose tonight, maybe 6 win, maybe even 5 wins at most, honestly, with how good the SEC West is. But Georgia still plays Kentucky. They still play Florida. And Tennessee looked pretty good today, surprisingly. They won on the road by 31 points. 31 points to Missouri. I didn't think Missouri was that good, and Georgia still plays Missouri. I didn't think Missouri was that good, but to lose by 31 points is embarrassing at home, man. So the SEC East is clearly one-sided right now. But yeah, and you can ask this question, who's Georgia's toughest opponent? I think it's Florida right now. Kentucky, they looked like a top 15 team in the first 2 weeks. Since then, I haven't seen it. They've won – Kentucky has won both these games each of the past 2 weeks by 5 and 6 to 2 terrible teams. Chattanooga is not a good FCS team, and it is an FCS team as well. They also barely beat South Carolina 16-10. Offense looked terrible. Again, I got to see Florida and Kentucky play tonight, but I think those are Georgia's 2 toughest games remaining on the schedule. It's going to be hard to beat Georgia this year. It really is. That defense is insane. It doesn't matter. I mean, they played. Georgia really played a great offense yet? Arkansas, coming into this game, had a solid offense. They were running over teams. Their passing offense wasn't great. The most they had in a game, I think, was last week, which what was it, like 230 yards passing? But they were coming in running over teams. And Georgia's best part of that defense, their bread and butter, is that rush defensive scheme. And that's Kirby Smart's scheme for you, especially in the middle. You can't run the ball up the middle against Georgia. That's just never going to happen. Even laterally, you got all these cornerbacks. Brinney played pretty well on the outside. Chris Smith, he's not a corner, but he was able to wrap up on the outside. Arkansas just couldn't do what Arkansas does best, and that's run the football. And that's what they wanted to do. And Arkansas could not own the line of scrimmage. That was expected. That's why I didn't think Arkansas was going to be much of a hassle for UGA, but they're still a pretty good team, So we'll see. I asked this last week, was Arkansas good enough to compete with UGA? That answer was obviously no, unfortunately. And I love Sam Pittman. You guys got to give Sam Pittman a lot of credit. Coming into this season, I think Arkansas had the 11th or 12th best rated roster in the entire SEC. And that's just based off of composite recruiting rankings. So, take that however you want. But still, I mean, look what he's done so far. They are 4-1. 4-1. Ask yourself this in the offseason. Did you think Arkansas in the first 5 weeks would come into the year 4-1? 4-1, meaning they would have to either beat UGA or Texas A&M. Okay? Not a lot of people would have thought that. Most people would have had them at 2-3 or 3-2. I had them at 3-2 in the first 5 weeks, beating Texas, as I do like to say. And that win looks pretty good so far. Texas is 4-1. Texas is a top 25 team. Texas A&M is a top 25 team. So those 2 wins for Arkansas were very good, and they deserve to be ranked 8th. From what we've seen for the first 4 weeks, they deserve to be ranked 8th. Unfortunately for Arkansas, they had to play the best or second best team in the country. So Ole Miss and Alabama's kicking already kicked off. I think Ole Miss is about to go for it on a 4th and short here. This is a big game for the SEC. This game right here might be the biggest game for the entire. Oh wow, Ole Miss got it. This game right here might be the biggest game for the entire SEC. Florida Georgia is always a big game. Alabama Texas A&M was supposed to be the biggest game, but I think it's this Ole Miss Alabama game. I fully anticipate Ole Miss to score on Bama. There's not a team, including Georgia. There's not a team in the country that would be able to slow down this Ole Miss offense or stop it. Really, I think Georgia would slow them down because I don't think they have enough, talent just yet. Lane Kiffin's done a great job though. But yeah, going back to Arkansas. They weren't, unfortunately, they just weren't good enough to even compete in this game. And that's why I asked that question last week. But I did actually believe Texas A&M was going to win, and I was wrong. So there is that. But looking back at the defense, 29 carries, 75 yards. That's what they gave up. Listen, I'm going to pull up the stats for you. Arkansas's rushing, the least amount of rushing yards they had, I believe, came last week against Texas A&M. Against A&M, they ran the ball 49 times. That tells you what Arkansas is. They ran the ball 49 times, had 197 yards rushing. Maybe it was against Rice because that seems like a little bit too high for their least amount. No. Literally last week, before this game, Arkansas's least amount of rushing yards was 197 yards rushing. 197. And they had that basically on 50 carries. So that's about 4 yards per carry. If you watched Texas A&M, I told you last week to watch that game. Texas A&M always starts out slow for whatever reason. They were down 17-0 already, and there was like 12 minutes in the second quarter. They gave up 320 yards to Arkansas in the first 18 or 19 minutes of the game. They finished the game giving up just 3 points and 130 yards to Arkansas. What Texas A&M was able to do defensively was limit the amount of yards rushing. I believe Arkansas had like 80 yards rushing in the second half, and that's nothing for Arkansas. So as I was watching the game, I was watching A&M's scheme. Originally, they were lining up. They were getting beat in the middle, as you saw Arkansas was trying to do against Georgia. You're just not going to be able to do that because Georgia has the best defensive tackle / nose tackle / nose guard in the country, Jordan Davis, as well as Devontae Wyatt on the inside and Jalen Carter. You're not going to be able to do that against UGA. But Michael Peavy is one of the better defensive tackles in the entire SEC. He was struggling in that game for A&M, and they were able to fix things up. And then it didn't matter because Arkansas already won the game because A&M's offense is terrible. But I was watching that game just to see what A&M's defense could do against that pretty good rush offense. And running the football is important, just as important as passing the football. But I guess we can talk about Georgia's running game real quick. For today, Georgia's running game was insane. We didn't really talk about Georgia's running game as much. Georgia came into this game, I think, 60th, 61st, 66th, something like that, in rushing yards per game. They were at around like 170, 180 yards rushing. That's nothing for UGA. UGA in the past, especially in 2019, 2018, they were a team that was running the ball for over 200 yards per game, around like 230, it seemed, I believe. And Georgia was just not running the ball as much. They were more of a balanced team in the past 4 weeks. Now, this week they came in and they just owned Arkansas on the line of scrimmage. This is the best game Georgia's offensive line played. And it allowed so many holes for Georgia's running backs. But you know who also played really well? The tight ends. Fitzpatrick in the blocking was amazing today. In fact, this was probably Fitzpatrick's best game for run blocking that I've seen in a while. Brock Bowers was doing a lot of work on the outside end and even inside when they pulled him in for a couple runs. Washington didn't really play as much. I didn't count how many times that he played. I'm guessing that he played maybe 10, 15 snaps. I don't know. I didn't really see him as much. But yeah. And a lot of Georgia fans were worried about the running game. Georgia's rush game in the first 3 games was pretty much non-existent, okay? They were around 130 yards, 140, 135, something like that per game, which was in the 80s. And Georgia fans were upset with that because that's not typical Georgia football. But last week, especially later in the game against Vandy, I know it's Vandy, but still, Georgia was able to run the ball and then carry that over into this game, and they just completely dominated. It all starts on the line of scrimmage. And I didn't really think it was that much of a, of an issue for UGA because they were still rushing for 4.5, 5, 6 yards per carry. And they finished this game at around 5 yards per carry. If you're able to run the ball for 5 yards per carry, you're winning the game. That just is what it is, especially if you rush it for how many times? Georgia rushed it for almost 50 times in this game. This was not a balanced game for UGA. As you expected, it was very conservative with the play calling. Oh, Georgia rushed it 56 times. So there you go. They were at or around 5 yards per carry. These first down and second down rushes kill your defense, especially your front seven. And that's just what happens. They wore them down. So Georgia's rush game was not a problem, in my opinion, as much as people, said, because UGA just didn't run the ball as much as they used to in years past. I think UGA was actually averaging 13.5 less rushes per game or something like that than in recent years. So, but this game they came in and run the ball. Nothing else to really say. Very conservative. They just dominated Arkansas on the line of scrimmage. And they really just dominated Arkansas on all aspects of the game. JT Daniels was out. Putting Stetson Bennett in, the only benefit to having Stetson Bennett is his mobility. His decision-making is not as good as JT Daniels. His arm talent is not as anywhere near as good as JT Daniels. And really, he's just nowhere near the level of QB as JT Daniels. So, there's really nothing much to say about that. But, yeah, Georgia completely dominated this game. So make sure you guys are liking this video and this live stream, and make sure you're following the SEC football channel at the Voice of College Football, and even the Georgia football channel at the Voice of College Football. We do videos almost daily, especially on the SEC channel. We do videos daily, and we post a good bit per week or per day, as I meant. But even the Georgia channel, we're starting to get that one going and starting to push more people to go watch and subscribe to that channel as well. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe for us. Make sure you guys leave us some more comments, even when this video is over. And yeah. Play calling, if we want to talk about play calling, this game was conservative offensively, very aggressive defensively. Georgia defensively plays how they play every week. It doesn't matter who they play. They're going to force you to make bad decisions. And give KJ Jefferson a lot of credit. He really didn't make any bad decisions this game. He didn't fumble the ball. He didn't throw any interceptions. He threw a couple bad passes because he just didn't have any time to throw, or to even – some of these plays didn't even develop by the time he was sacked or throwing the ball to a check down. So give KJ Jefferson some credit in this game, because he was really, really, really hassled, and he was even banged up. So shout out to him for playing in this game. I thought he played okay. I mean, no one on Arkansas played well, unfortunately. No one even played good. So you can't really sit here and say Arkansas had a decent game, because they unfortunately did not. But that's just what's going to happen when you play Georgia. This game should not take away anything Arkansas has done and what they're going to be doing the next couple of weeks. They play who they play? They play Ole Miss next. That is a tough, and the Arkansas schedule is insane. But I mean, a lot of SEC teams, especially the West, schedules are insane. You got to play your best ball every week in the SEC. What's up, Chris? Pleasure to see you here. We're just pretty much wrapping up the Georgia game. Here's Georgia's defense, just 162 yards. Again, a great game for Georgia as a whole. And really, watching Georgia's defense is fun. I know a lot of people don't like defensive games, but watch Georgia's defense. Georgia's defense is fun to watch. I don't care what anybody says. That defense is insane, especially watching Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean, Devontae Wyatt. You're good, man. Trayvon Walker, Nolan. How about Nolan Smith had a pretty good game? Oh yeah, Jalen Carter had an amazing game. He had I think was it Zeus that scored that touchdown, or was it Milton? I can't remember now. Great. Back in the first quarter, Jalen Carter blocked 3 people at once. That's insane. But yeah, watching that defensive line is just fun. Adam Anderson, he had his 4th sack of the year. Georgia has 9 players with at least a sack. It's just insane watching this defense. They are diminishing, and they just absolutely attack. And that's what I love watching. And a lot of people don't like seeing good defenses or elite defenses. Let's be real here. Georgia has an elite defense. A lot of people don't like watching defensive games. I'm telling you, watch Georgia's football. Georgia's defense is fun to watch. Come on. I mean, I don't know how people can't like that, unless you're playing against them, obviously. But yeah, before I get out of here, last finishing touches. Georgia plays on the road against against Auburn next week. That game should be interesting. Auburn plays tonight on the road against LSU. That game is pretty much Auburn's season. If I don't want to be like that, but it pretty much is. and that's actually LSU season right there too. Auburn plays on the road against LSU. The loser of that game, at best, in my opinion, is looking at 5th or 6th in the West. At best. I mean, they could even finish last, unfortunately. That is such a huge game for both those teams. Georgia gets Auburn next week on the road after an emotional win or an emotional loss. And that's just going to be tough. It's hard to play UGA, but it's really hard to play after an emotional win, and you saw that with Arkansas. They were just never able to get anything going. And I know it's a home game for Auburn, but again, I don't expect much from Auburn. I'm sorry. I don't think Auburn is that good. I think they're a 6 or 7 win team at best, maybe 8 wins. But I could legitimately see this team going 5 and 7, or even if they lose tonight, they could slip down to 4 and 8 if they don't get things going. They are very inconsistent now, it seems. They went from looking really, really, really good in the first 2 games against 2 terrible teams, Akron and an FCS team, to then playing pretty well against Penn State on the road. They were gifted some calls, though, but still they played well. They played good enough to win? No. But then we saw against Georgia State, and now you got to play LSU, who's playing their best ball as of late. So good luck with that. And then Georgia's going to come in a road favorite by how many points you can lay, whatever, at least 20-something. The problem is you do have to go on the road against Auburn and Jordan-Hare. Jordan-Hare, a lot of crazy things happen to top 5 teams. But Georgia is very consistent. Especially, Kirby Smart has, especially in his first 4 years as a head coach in the SEC, he was having trouble with SEC road games. His first year, he lost to Ole Miss by 31. His second year, he lost to Auburn by 23. His third year, he lost to LSU by 20. Now, his fourth year, he went into Auburn and won by 7. That game really should not have come to that close. But Georgia, but really they have struggled on the road in these SEC West games. Last year is an anomaly, so you can't really count that. Who they play on the road? They played Alabama. So technically speaking, he's what? 1-4 on the road in the SEC West games. Did we play another one last year? We may have. I just can't even remember. But he started 0-3. But going on the road against Auburn, I expect UGA to dominate. Georgia's going to be around a 24, at least 24-point favorite, maybe even 26, 27, 28. And I think Georgia will roll. But anyway, guys, final things to say here. Georgia just completely dominated Arkansas. This game was never close as expected. And Georgia got the W and won by 37 points against a top 10 team. Add another win for Kirby Smart's top 10 record, which is one of the best in the country as of active head coaches, by the way. Not to rub that in, but yeah. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week after the Auburn game, more than likely. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the Georgia College Football channel at the Voice of College Football, and this channel, the SEC Football, at the Voice of College Football channel. We do videos daily on the SEC channel, and we try to do as much videos as we can. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.